Hello and good day everyone, how's it going? I'm Sean David and welcome back to the show. The 1992 Dream Team is considered to be the best team ever assembled, and rightfully so. We had some of the biggest names in basketball history. And I was thinking, what would have been if we would have had the chance in 1988 to select the Dream Team? Well, and this is exactly what we're going to cover in this video. I will take a look at my personal 1988 Dream Team. And believe me, it was a lot more difficult than you would expect. But before we start with this video, a quick shout out to my Patreons. Thanks so much you guys for supporting the show. And I would say, let's get right into today's episode. Now for this team, I would use the same rules as for the 1992 Dream Team, which means 11 professionals and 1 college player. Alright, let's start. The 1992 Dream Team was selected 8 to 9 months prior to the Olympics, so I will approach this the same way and start with the coaching staff, or let's say the head coach. The 92 Dream Team had Chuck Daly, who won 2 championships with the Detroit Pistons. Now, in 1987, he didn't have the same accolades, and Pat Riley was definitely the best coach at that time, so Pat Riley would be my head coach for the Dream Team 1988. Now, once we get to the players, I want to start with the point guard position, and this would be a really easy choice. Magic Johnson would be the starting point guard because he was a multiple All-Star at that time, was an NBA champion, and clearly by far with a huge gap, the best point guard in the league. Also, I believe it would be nice for Pat Riley to have his starting point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers on his team. There's a foundation of trust, and in Magic Johnson you already have a great leader who is used to play alongside superstars. Now with the second point guard, we already will have our first big major change. Isiah Thomas will replace John Stockton. As we all know, with the 92 Dream Team, there was a big controversy why Isiah Thomas was left off. Well, with this Dream Team, it's pretty simple. Isiah Thomas was way ahead of John Stockton at that time, so Isiah Thomas gets the second spot. From the point guard position to the shooting guard position, and it's obvious the first spot belongs to Michael Jordan. At that time, Michael Jordan was the leading scorer in the NBA and also considered to be the next best player next to Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. If I compare the Michael Jordan of the 1980s and 1990s, of course I have to mention that in the 80s, Michael was a little bit more selfish, but that also had a lot to do with the fact that Michael Jordan didn't have the supporting cast at that time. A thing that would be really interesting to see would be how the dynamic between Isiah Thomas and Michael Jordan worked out, because Michael at that time claimed that he never had a problem with Isiah, so that would be really interesting to see. The second shooting guard position also was not an easy one. Now I will choose Clyde Drexler, but I have to mention that it was a closer call than you might think, because at that time Clyde Drexler was just becoming Clyde the Glide in terms of establishing himself as an NBA superstar. We have to remember that the golden age of shooting guards came a little bit later. Guys like a Reggie Miller or Joe Dumars weren't quite there yet. But we have to mention Alvin Robertson, who was a feisty defender, a multiple All-Star, and definitely would have had a chance to be in that team, but as I said, I picked Clyde the Glide Drexler. Now the small forward position was definitely the toughest. Back in the days, and especially in those 2 years, we had the best small forwards in NBA history. But I still had to make my decision. I will start with the one player that's actually easy. Larry Bird obviously has to be on that team. Now we have one more player on the floor who can literally do everything. He can shoot, he can pass, he can rebound, and we gain a lot more of basketball IQ. Now obviously I'm putting together my personal team. The question is, would Larry Bird play alongside Magic Johnson and for Pat Riley? Well, the thing is, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird at that time really got along. The bigger problem is who's taking the second small forward position. And here it comes. The first shock will be Scottie Pippen will be replaced. In 1987, Scottie was a rookie and still fighting to be in the starting lineup of the Chicago Bulls. He was far away from being an All-Star at the time. Now, if we simply go by the superstar status, James Worthy could have been the pick. It would make sense, since Pat Riley's the head coach and Magic Johnson the starting point guard. But again, if we go by the last 2 years, James did not have his best seasons in 1986 and 1987. which is why he does not make the team. And this is exactly where I'm going to shock you again. The second player out of the three will be Alex English. Some of you might not even know this guy, but Alex English is not only the player who scored the most points in the 1980s, but also a high percentage shooter. Look at his numbers from the last two important seasons. And if you don't believe me, let's have Nick Van Exel tell you more.
In his 15-year NBA career, Alex English was named to the All-Star team 8 times, and the smooth shooting forward led the league in scoring during the 1982-83 season. He's the leading scorer in Denver Nuggets team history and is 11th on the NBA's all-time scoring list.
Are you ready for today's English lesson? Do you know who scored 2,000 points in 8 consecutive seasons? Do you know who scored the most points in the 1980s? Who had one of the smoothest jump shots ever? It was this guy, Mr. Silky Smooth, Mr. Nugget, Alex English. The definition of smooth is having an even or gentle motion or movement. A player is silky smooth if he goes about his game, he doesn't complain, he doesn't showboat, he just gets the job done.
English. Yes. Smooth, isn't he?
He is smooth. He was so smooth because you never knew what he was going to do. He would take off-balance shots and they would go right through the net. You know, all his shots was pretty much a swish shot. And anytime he shot the ball, you pretty much counted it. The definition of a jump shot is a shot made by a player at the highest point of a jump. His high-release shot was just unbelievable because you didn't have a chance at blocking him. The only thing you can do is just put a hand in his face or contest it and just hope he missed it. A guy who shoots the ball like that, the way he does and as high as he does, is unguardable. Alex was the type of guy that we call it itis. It'll be an Alex English itis. Anytime you had to face a guy like him, when you know he's going to give you 29 or 30 points a night, you would come up with some type of injury, and then your teammates agree, yeah, you got the Alex English-itis.
The third and last available spot with the small forward position goes to Dominique Wilkins, aka the human highlight film. Now I'm very happy for Dominique because, as you know, with the 92 Dream Team, Dominique had no chance to be on that team because he torn his ACL and was out for the entire season. Now let me take you back to the 1986 and 1987 seasons. Dominique was making a lot of noise in the Eastern Conference with the Atlanta Hawks, and even though he never made it to the conference finals, that was more because of the huge competition that he had back in the days. But it's safe to say that Dominique was an established NBA star at that time, and that's why also gets the nod over Chris Mullin, who at that time was just averaging 15 points and doesn't make the team. Now we get to the power forward position, and again I have to do something that really hurts. With the Dream Team in 1992, we had Karl Malone and Charles Barkley as the power forwards, but now one of the guys needs to be removed, and unfortunately it's one of my favorite players of all time. It is Charles Barkley. In the years 1986 and 1987, there were 2 players on his position who were ahead of him. The one player, Karl Malone, who was averaging 29 points the season prior, and NBA legend Kevin McHale, who also came off an incredible season, averaging 26 points, plus playing for the Boston Celtics, winning multiple championships, whereas Charles Barkley was struggling with the Philadelphia 76ers and was just about to become an NBA superstar. Only 2 years later, I would give one of the spots to Charles, but in 1988, it would be Kevin McHale and Karl Malone. Now let's talk about the big position. Here again we will have one major change. With the 1992 Dream Team, we had Patrick Ewing and David Robinson. David Robinson only being in his second season but already putting up incredible numbers, and Patrick Ewing, who was in the prime of his career. Now, in 1988, Patrick Ewing was far away from his prime, but still I would have to pick Patrick. Why? Well, David Robinson wasn't in the NBA yet, and most of the great bigs at that time were in the fall of their career, like for example Robert Parrish or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Now the second big that I will choose is the late great Moses Malone, one of the best rebounders of all time, but also a guy who could give you 25 easily. So with Patrick Ewing and Moses Malone, I think I'm more than good on the center position. As I said in the beginning of the video, the same rules apply like with the 1992 Dream Team, which means I have to choose a college player. If I take a closer look at my roster, I could really use a shooter, which is why I will choose Mitch Richmond, a player that not only can shoot, but also who can run the floor and also who's a great defender and therefore will be a valuable addition to my team. Now let's have a look again. So I have Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Michael Jordan, Clyde Drexler, Alex English, Dominique Wilkins, Larry Bird, Karl Malone, Kevin McHale, Patrick Ewing, Moses Malone, and my college player is Mitch Richmond, who by the way became the Rookie of the Year that year. Oh, I think not bad at all. It's kind of crazy to think that only 4 years earlier the team would have looked completely different. But hey, that's my 1988 Dream Team. I hope you enjoyed it. Please post your team underneath the comments, and I will see you next time. Peace, I'm out.